Hello everyone! Today we are going to talk about El Salvador becoming the first country in the world to propose Bitcoin becoming a legal tender. Now, just recently, at the biggest Bitcoin conference in the United States in Miami, the president of El Salvador has announced that he will propose a bill that will make Bitcoin a legal tender in his country, making El Salvador the first country globally that would propose Bitcoin being a legal tender. Now, just to explain a little bit, is that being a legal tender means that we could use Bitcoin actually as a means of payments to extinguish debt. So for instance, if we took out a certain loan or we have certain debt, in El Salvador we could actually use Bitcoin to make that repayment. Now, while this has been a very exciting news and it was transmitted globally as the first country ever to propose that, the actual impact of that news globally at the moment is not going to be very great. Now, in order for El Salvador's action to make a big impact, it needs to actually have a very strong network effect impact, meaning that having El Salvador accepting Bitcoin as a legal tender would actually influence or motivate a lot of other countries around the globe to also accept Bitcoin as a legal tender. Now, due to the fact that El Salvador is actually a very small country and it doesn't do a lot of international trade, the immediate impact around the globe is not going to be very great. On the other side, when it comes to El Salvador itself, the impact could actually be very great. El Salvador as a country is still very much a cash-based society, and most of the society doesn't even have simple and digital means of payments. So, as an example of that, for instance, a crypto company called Strike just recently launched an app that would enable people in El Salvador to make payments with Bitcoins and have their own wallet that would support Bitcoin and Bitcoin payments. Even though this is a very exciting news for El Salvador and the world globally, we have to ask ourselves, can Bitcoin actually become a legal tender globally, and can it become a means of payment globally? Now, even though Bitcoin originally was envisioned as a peer-to-peer electronic payment network, due to the fact that the blockchain of Bitcoin is quite slow processing all those payments and all those transactions, it is not highly likely that Bitcoin will become globally a legal tender or a means of payments. What it is more likely is that Bitcoin becomes one of the world's reserves assets. So for instance, a reserve asset can be gold or even a currency like dollar or Chinese yuan. So in the context of what we have just said, it's more likely that one day Bitcoin will become a reserve asset and central banks and governments around the globe will have Bitcoin on their balance sheet as one of the reserve assets. So I hope you learned something interesting, that El Salvador is the world's first country that proposes to introduce Bitcoin as a legal tender and potentially as a means of payment, but going forward in the future, it's more likely that Bitcoin will become one of the world's reserves assets. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and stay liquid.